Who wants to do some Q&A? Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I was wondering if you could say more about the meaning of optimal temporal reality. Yeah, what exactly is it?
So, realities and timelines, there's no difference. If something comes from another reality, that's a different timeline. When we first started obtaining technologies from non-terrestrials, we quickly realized that these spaceships were time machines. They use temporal drives, the most advanced ones. And it's really, people have a problem with time travel, but space travel we can kind of understand, you know. But there is no difference. If you're traveling through space, you're traveling through time. The faster you travel through space, the faster you're traveling through time, because they're linear. These temporal drives were allowing, in the beginning it was accidental, these researchers to either view or travel back into time. And the ones that were actually traveling back into time, they were causing problems. They were causing time schisms. And then they would send back another team to try to fix that time schism. And that wouldn't work out, so they'd send back another team. And all they were doing were causing more fractures and splits in timelines. Finally, the non-terrestrials told us, you know, you guys understand warp drives, and you understand that space can be stretched and expanded and contracted. So not only does space, is it elastic and snaps back after it's been manipulated, so does time. They told us that if we quit trying to manipulate time, all these timelines were going to snap back together like a rubber band. Well, these different timelines that we're co-creating or that have been created for us through these programs, we can accidentally change the whole direction of our timeline by a certain amount of people experiencing a Mandela effect and being pulled over to a different timeline. What we're trying to do is navigate these different timelines to make sure that we are conscious and experiencing the most optimal temporal timeline or reality, to create a temporal reality that is positive, to where, you know, the Anshar, we develop into the Anshar and other inner earth groups, you know. Now, you know, there were those who remember, and I wish I had a slide for it, the different inner earth groups, there were all the different races were represented there, you know. It's not that we're all going to turn into these alabaster-skinned, white-haired or yellow-haired people, you know. But all of the races, everyone is going to make this transition. And the optimal temporal reality is that, you know, all of us obtain this consciousness shift that moves us in the right direction. If we allow ourselves to be steered on a different timeline, then you know, we're going to co-create that reality. I hope that answered your question. Yeah, time stuff is very difficult to talk about. Well, like I said, we understand space, but understanding the elasticity of time and how time works, how it's created by gravitational fields, is something that, you know, we're just now starting to bend our minds around.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication for all these years, you and David, for the service to humanity. And it's not easy. You've talked about that. I had a question about your 20 and back. You spoke about at one lecture where you said that after 20 years, they brought you back to age 17, and then you lived a couple years before they took you again, or how did that work from time to time to time?
Right. Yeah, the 20 and back, you know, involves the time stuff, and it's very hard to understand. You know, you're existing on multiple timelines. So yes, just before I was 17, on my Christmas break, I was taken into the program, signed a bunch of papers, and then was taken to the Lunar Operation Command, to where they took blood samples, all kinds of readings from equipment that I couldn't even begin to understand at the time to develop a baseline. And then I continued on with my service for 20 years. At the end of that 20-year period, they brought me back to the LOC, and I signed more papers, lots of papers, so much so as they had a person sitting there guiding me through the process, and then they did an age regression, which was done through pharmaceutical means. It was an IV that they put into me, and I also, you have to be completely still during the process. So they put me pretty much into a drug-induced coma, along with these pharmaceuticals that were being pumped in that were reversing the age of the cells and bringing you back.
But how they get you back the next time?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then after they age regressed you, they put you in what looked like a giant MRI, except it didn't have just one thing and they moved you in and out. They put you in this MRI that was like 8 foot deep, and it was solid machine. And they put you in that, and that was a time machine that made a point-to-point. You went out of time, and then you popped back 20 years, but you're in that same machine.
Right, I understand.
So then, they go through the blank slating process, put in screen memories, and they return you. Okay.
Then what?
Then, if you're an asset that has skills that they need, like intuitive empaths that were developed to a point that were able to interface with other beings, were a commodity that was needed. Then they would revisit you as an asset, it could be months later or it could be years later, and then they repeat that exact same process. So now you're on multiple timelines. You're existing in multiple
Now I
timelines.
understand.
Yes.
Wow. How many 20 and back do you think you've had?
I was on 3, and in the third one, about 8 years into it, I burned out as an asset. This cocktail that they give you to increase your intuitive empath abilities had a detrimental effect on your neurology. Your exposure to these extreme electromagnetic fields affected your neurology. So I got to a point about 8 years in, and I was not useful to them anymore. I was burned out. So they then took me, and I then began to be a mentor for new people going into the program, the kids. They're 16, 17-year-old kids.
My goodness.
And a number of them have recognized me, and there's been some connections, that have been made. But they, because I was not useful as a tool, I became useful as a teacher or a mentor. And there were mentors like that when I was 16, 17 years old that had been through the process one or more times and knew how to prepare us. So I was put into that role until the end of that last 20 and back. And then I was returned, and then they didn't come back for me because I just was not of use.
Thank you for that.
You don't look a day over 30.
Yeah, but he's in his hundreds, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm 47. What usually happens with people in 20 and backs, they age well to a certain point, and then it catches up like gangbusters. Someone will see you, you'll be like 50, 55 years old. They'll be, man, you look like you're 40. And then the next time they see you at a reunion or something, you look your age and then some. Yeah, but also a lot of neurological issues come along with that, Yeah.
Corey, when we incarnated in this third density, we accepted this veil of ignorance. As we progress, moving towards the fourth or the fifth or the flash, is there any way that veil will start to come back and we'll get the knowledge?
Yes, absolutely. we are being affected by a number of things. The Orions have a grid around that's affecting our consciousness. The current state of our star, it has a direct relation to our consciousness level. Once we go through this consciousness shift, all of this information, we're going to have a closer connection with our higher selves and the Akashic realm. No one will be able to deceive you. No one will be able to sit there and lie to you. No one will be able to hide anything. It'll all be accessible. And the longer we spend in this new consciousness vibration, and the more we learn how to use it, the more and more impossible it becomes to hide anything from us. So yes, we certainly will overcome this forgetting. And it was the forgetting of who you are is a part of cosmic law. They're not going to put in, you're not going to be like a fourth or fifth density being that has come here to try to help this planet. They're not going to let you incarnate having all of that knowledge. You have to go through the same process as those that you're here to help. You have to, you have to know where they're coming from. And if we incarnated here with full knowledge, we're going to affect, even though we're doing it in a loving way, if we give that information to the surface population, it's going to affect us badly because we didn't go through the whole process. It'll be a jump, and we didn't go through the growth that we need to go through, the very painful growth.
I had an experience when I was a teenager. I grew up in New York City. My boyfriend at the time and we went to our favorite disco at the time. At one point he says, "Oh, Ingrid, I'm going to go to the bar, get a drink." He went to the bar, and something compelled me to look to my left, and I saw the strangest looking guy, and he was just staring at me. He was small, really, really skinny, very pale, weird looking face, and he was staring at me. And next thing I know, he was, in the blink of an eye, he went from the platform there to right in front of me. And he just kept staring inside me, and I felt like, I was hypnotized in a way. But I was very aware at the same time. Next thing I know, there was like this mist. Next thing I know after that is I was what I thought was his apartment. Suddenly, this little skinny guy picked me up and laid me like on this bed. He took his hand and just went and scanned my whole body to the bottom of my feet, and he never touched me. It was just his hand. It went through my body.
I've heard of those
Really?
situations, yeah, to where they affect your chakras, and I'm new to a lot of that information. I can't tell you this chakra does that. That I've just I haven't
Yeah.
studied it that much. But it was explained to me when I was in the programs that they're able to manipulate those energy centers. And most likely he manipulated that energy center that is connected to the experience that we would call an orgasmic experience. We just have no other way to interpret it.
And I felt, I don't like this healing energy happening. What do you think? Who do you think that was, or?
Well, the who and the why is very difficult to, discover. A lot of us, we feel that maybe, that these different ETs are giving us screen memories, which they do. But a lot of times, what is occurring is that your higher self is giving you information through your lens. The higher self is presenting a being to you in a way that it's not going to traumatize you. Just like, I've had people witness UFOs with me that don't believe in UFOs. And the next day I'm like, man, and we talk about it for like 20 minutes. And because everyone that hangs out with me, you're going to see a UFO. You're going to. Everyone has. And but many times the next day they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Man, we talked about it for like 20 minutes." What do you? And they're like, I've never seen a UFO. I don't believe in UFOs."
Because they're blocked. It happened
Yeah.
with my husband.
Your higher self will give you information through that lens, so not to shock you. Like, if that very strange looking man was really a tall gray or one of these other beings, and in your development you were not ready to see, it would be detrimental for you to remember that experience coming from a non-human, then your higher self is going to assist your psyche by causing you to see it as a goofy looking man. Now, these beings will also do that because they're not only interacting with us, like our ego, who we think we are, they're interacting with us on a higher level with our higher selves. So there's a lot more. I mean, I didn't find all that out until fairly recently. And then things started to make a lot more sense to me.
Hi, Corey. This is a totally different tack, but I've heard often about the ascension, about this blast of energy, and how it will be somewhat destructive in some ways. And I was wondering if you have any sense of what's going to happen to other creatures on this earth, the animals, the incredible diversity of life that we have on this earth, and how they would be affected. Are they going to be saved? I hear about entire groups of animals that are mass die-offs and
Right.
things like that going on. And I was wondering if you've heard any sense of how the rest of the earth is going to fare from all of this that's happening.
Right, and us using our third density understanding of things, the answer to this is going to be a little bit disturbing. These beings, the Hopi have talked about during, the cataclysms, them and animals were taken underground, and protected, continuity of species. And that occurs for all the different living beings on the planet. They're going to take, like a seed bank, they're going to take some of these beings away, and then the cataclysms will happen and the changes will happen, and then they in the past they'd been reintroduced. These cycles have happened many times. Life has been almost completely wiped off the surface of the earth many times, but it always comes back. And look at what we have on the earth now. The diversity of life. Now, the way these beings see us as containers for the divine spark of the one infinite creator, and we're all one, including the animals, the bacteria, everything, we're all one. They see a death or something like that as a transition or an opportunity. They don't see it as an end of something. They see it as an opportunity. All evolution occurs through stress. So these types of stresses are actually needed, and the certain animals and people that will perish in certain parts of the cataclysm, it's not going to be everyone's wiped off, all the animals are wiped off, but there's going to be loss of life, significant. And we see, we're mortal beings trying to cling on to our own mortality, so we see life and death quite a bit differently than these beings that are basically stewarding and managing our planet. So yes, there are going to be deaths, but what we see as a horrific, scary situation, they see as an opportunity for these divine sparks of the one infinite creator to then go from that experience to a higher density experience, and or just to learn within that life in that density, of being a second density, creature. It's all a part of this great evolutionary grand cycle that's going on every planet. So, a lot of, I mean, my daughter became vegan because she just loves all animals so much, and if a person was killed, she would be sad, but if an animal is killed, she's devastated. Devastated. So I would never try to have this conversation with her because she's not going to wrap her mind around, this fourth and higher density way of looking at what occurs during these cataclysms. But death is not the end; it's just a part of the process. But when we truly understand the concept that we are one, we are all sparks of the one infinite creator. We are the one infinite creator trying to understand good and evil, left and right, trying to understand these concepts. We're just, we haven't really fully embraced and understood the we are one concept. We're still locked into these egos of separation, of second density, like bacteria and animals, and how they're so much different than us third, and the differences between all of us within third density. All of that melts away when we realize that we are one, that we're one aspect of the one infinite creator. Then we begin to look at things quite a bit differently. We begin to get pulled out of the ego and separation and pulled more towards unity.
Hey, Corey. So proud watching your growth over the past couple of years. I've heard you since you had the first time on the radio, and then at your first time on Gaia, and just amazing to see the growth, and so proud of you. Really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's also amazing to see that you've followed the spiritual wisdom that you gave early on and look at your life now, being vegan and being healthy and fit and spiritual and super conscious. It's amazing.
Well, I'm vegetarian now. I didn't last being a vegan very long.
Well, it's a good step.
I was a junk food vegan. I wasn't getting I was suffering from malnutrition. I mean, when I was in Hawaii, I had my foot stuck in the sand and I twisted and my foot broke. It's because your bones are 30% collagen, and I was getting 0 collagen. And I reevaluated things, and I went to just being a vegetarian.
Can you tell us maybe some examples of best and worst or scary and loving situations you've had with other entities and beings you've met, whether it's the Anshar or it's aliens from other planets, rooms you've been in alone, and just what is it like to be with a being, that's not from our Earth, that doesn't look like us, and is it scary?
Yes, it's scary. When everyone remarks to me about how stoic I am on cosmic disclosure, as I'm telling these, it's in front of a 14-foot tall white Draco Royal, and I'm just matter-of-factly telling it. Well, I was scared out of my mind. The secret space program security people that were with me, they were scared out of their mind, and I've seen many different non-terrestrials. I've interfaced with many non-terrestrials. None of them that was such a mind rape as with this reptilian. It was a very powerful being. We all stayed, somewhat calm, cool, and collective, but, we thought we were anyway, during the interaction. But when we got into the elevator that was taking us back up to the top floor where we were dropped off, we all began to just shake uncontrollably, and my hands were shaking so bad it looked like I had like 10 hands, and I could barely. My legs were like gelatin. I could barely climb back up into the shuttle. I mean, it was it's a very. I mean, you have a very visceral reaction. Now, that's on the far extreme to the scary, Now, interacting with beings like Mika or Tirer, you feel of the peace and the love coming from them and the understanding they're giving you. It helps you overcome the fight or flight type of visceral reaction you have. But when I was going through the MyLab training, they did not just walk us into a room with aliens. we would see drawings or pictures of them. Then they would do things like when the first time I consciously in a waking state saw a gray. I had been picked up by them before, but is it a dream? Is it not a dream? But the first time I saw one and was fully conscious, I was put into one of the machines that give you virtual reality that's impossible to tell from reality, the virtual realities. And after you go through the different war games or different training sessions they have you in, when I walked into the room, there were people in military uniforms and white coats, sitting down, standing up, card table, and when I come out of the training, I get up and as I'm walking out, no one says a word. They don't say, look over there, but now there's a gray alien sitting at the table, just watching. So they slowly acclimate you to interacting with these beings, because it is a shock, whether they're positive or negative. It is a major shock to our psyche.
Hi, Corey.
Hello.
So I am a professional psychic medium, and on a regular daily basis, I'm having active clairvoyant visions for my clients. When it comes to my dreaming state, I have no memory of my dreams unless they're prophetic, okay? And it happens few and far between that I actually remember a dream. And it was very interesting to me that you brought up the solar flare today, because a week or two ago, I actually had a dream about it, and I had never even heard of a solar flare before. And I woke up complete terror, because I didn't even know what I had just witnessed. And so I'm going to share it with you.
Please.
It might help answer some questions,
Okay.
but I'm
Well,
also...
Before you share it, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Have you noticed that these remembering of dreams, has it started to increase?
On August 22nd, I had a very bad dream about the pedophilia in New York and all sorts of different things. So, I mean, this is the second dream in a matter of 2 months. And they're
Okay.
all shadow aspects of the collective consciousness that I seem to get. So I was hovering in this dream about the solar flare. I was hovering, my dream opened up in me basically hovering in space, looking at Earth. And I saw this big, huge wave from the sun coming at Earth. Like, it was like a tidal force from the sun coming, and Earth started to pass through this wave. It wasn't a solar flare, it was a solar bigger thing than that. Yeah. And I was like, whoa. And I was just watching it without any apprehension at that moment, but then my consciousness and awareness started zooming in 1,000,000 miles an hour into the Earth. The next thing in my dream, it phased into me being inside of a major city on the Earth, and it could have been New York City for all I know. We were, meaning myself and other conscious people that knew why we were in the building. We were in like a steel reinforced building, skyscraper, in the middle of this very active city, and we all knew what was going on outside of us in the streets, and we all knew why we were in the building was because we were basically escaping whatever that big flare was, okay? Or the big solar whatever I was seeing. And outside, I could see everything that was going on outside because the windows were reinforced in some way, but I could still see through them. It looked like solar tornadoes. It looked like a very bad hurricane of glowing orange, just wiping everything out in the streets. Like, people were flying through the sky, like everything, cars, everything. So my people and I that were in the skyscraper at that time went down into the building, or the bottom of the building, into the cement basement, and kind of just waited. And we all knew by listening to the activity outside when it was over. And then when we came out, the streets were completely empty, but there was no chaos in the streets. There was no mess. It's like everything had evaporated. I felt a sense of sadness, but also purpose. Like, okay, the ones that knew to get into the building. I would say the aware ones were saved, yeah. And then there
That's
was
very
nothing.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it sounds a lot like kind of the harvest, how it's described in the Law of One. You know, that the flesh of the ones that are not going to make it are gone. Right.
Yeah.
Now, it might interest you to know that I have a lot of people that are mediums that contact me, and I've had a number of them tell me very similar dreams. So, you know, mediums are very tapped in to the Akashic and to the mass consciousness.
Yeah.
And the mass consciousness knows that this is coming, but people like yourself that are like really tapped in are pulling that information down. And, you know,
What do you think I'm supposed to do with this stuff? Because I didn't ask for these dreams. Do I tell
Yeah.
you about them? How? I don't know what to do when I get these. I scare Facebook people with
Yeah,
them.
yeah. That's why, I mean, the cataclysm stuff I'm very careful about, because people get locked into fear, which lowers their
Right.
vibration.
Right, but I'm like helpless when I get this dream and I
Right.
don't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
So I just say,
and maybe it's just for you, you know? It's just a byproduct of you being so tapped in more than the normal person is aware of. You having an awareness and a connection to the superconsciousness and the Akashic. You're tapped into that, so you're going to be getting feedback. And then this is a part of the mass consciousness, and it causes fear in people.
so I might be helping to create it, or is that an event
No.
that's beyond our control? Like the collective consciousness creating it type thing?
Well, what I'm told is that will not necessarily happen if enough of us awaken and co-create a different reality.
Right.
And people like yourself are given this information. Free will. I violated free will for too damn long, so I'm very careful. You know.
What do you mean violated?
Well, like if someone has said, you know, I got this information, what am I supposed to do with it? You know, for me to go and tell a person this means this, you should follow this path, when all of us, you know, have to learn from the situation and follow the path ourselves. You know, I could be damaging. You know,
You're kind of answering my question I have for you then too.
Yeah.
So I guess I have to ask you a couple Q&A first too. So would you agree that the universe has no bias as good or evil, right? Everything
Agreed,
just
yes.
is. Okay. So when it comes to absolution of karma, that we had talked about, I don't know if maybe you were talking about absolution of karma or clearing of karma, because you had talked about crying and basically releasing trauma is what it
Right.
sounded like to me. To me, karma is a little different in how I understand it. It's not trauma. Karma to
Right.
me is like a self-inflicted punishment.
Yes.
Because of a belief system.
Yes, and karma and the traumas. I meant to speak of two different things.
Okay.
You know, because the karma, the things that have occurred to you by sociopaths and narcissists in your
Trauma.
life,
Mhm.
you know, that cause a trauma. That's something that dealing with the pain and the trauma stops the wheel of karma, or it puts the wheel of karma also in perspective to where you know how to approach it.
Mhm.
Yes.
So basically, it's not necessarily, would you say then that it is love that is the absolution of karma, or conscious aware choice that is the absolution of karma? Because if you're choosing to not allow yourself to feel guilty anymore for something, are you then not just allowing
Well-
yourself to be released from that cycle?
The state that we're in now, the state of separation, of ego, of seeing, you know, I am the person that I was born, you know, in 1970, and these experiences, this is who I am. That is all, you know, a distortion that we have to overcome in this process. You know, we're
Right.
so you know we're all one, but we're see ourselves as these egos going through these experiences.
Right.
We have to once we fully understand that we are all one, and that we're just one little aspect of the one infinite creator having an experience to learn from, that alone begins to release a lot.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree with that. Okay. You answered my question. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
I just had a quick one. Pretty much this whole summer, I want to say around May on, at least in Pennsylvania here where I live, I've been observing the sky and it looks way different. Like the light, like there's like a different light spectrum. Like I've been calling it I've been calling it Truman Show sky.
Yeah, the
or
sun's
LEDs.
different.
Yeah.
When
but
I
the
was
light
young,
spectrum's totally
the
different.
sun was yellow.
Yeah, so what's
I remember
what's
it was
going
yellow.
on?
Now it's white.
I mean, it looks like a fake sky.
Yeah.
I mean, is it like a projection or what's
No.
or what's
Well,
going-
everything's a projection.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything's a projection. But no, the sun has been going through a transition for a while, and as the sun's going through a transition, so are all of the bodies that orbit it. So we're experiencing the transition that the sun's going through. I mean, like I said, the sun was yellow when I was a kid. I know. Well, you talk to scientists about it, and they're like, "Oh, that's just ridiculous," you know. When I'm like, "No, I was outside when I was a kid. It was yellow," you know. And no, well, I think that the Mandela effect is a part of everything. You know, the merging of timelines, snapping back together, and all that. But the thing with the sun is, the sun is going through a transition, just like the Earth is, and just like the fleas are. You know. And, we're looking up, trying to interpret through our lenses what is occurring. And so the bias that we have are going to keep us, our ego bias is going to keep us from being unified in what is going on and accepting it as everyone accepting the same thing in our co-creative consciousness or our mass consciousness. So there's not agreement in our mass consciousness on what is going on. So we're going to perceive things through all these different lenses and have slightly different experiences. When in the programs, there was a nemesis star, a failed star, and we do have other large planets in our system, but they were like, the charts that I saw, they were like, 17 degrees out of the ecliptic plane. They were kind of like Pluto. Pluto's not, orbiting in the ecliptic plane. It's slightly off. So are some of these other planetoids that are there's a failed star out there that they call Nemesis. There are gas giants that are in very far orbit that have been expelled from other solar systems and captured by ours, and they hang around for a while and then they are flung out of the orbit. A lot of those things have been tracked, and information has been given to us about by non-terrestrials. Now, the Nibiru that is depicted in the Sumerian or certain interpretations of Sumerian text, there was nothing in the charts that showed any of these planets that were entering our star system every 3,500 years and coming close. What they did note was that the the orbit between most star systems are binary, and ours is too. It's a failed, red dwarf, kind of star. And as these orbits occur, at some point they're a little bit closer together in the orbit, and then the gravitational fields affect the Oort cloud and cause things to fling into the inner solar system, which causes a lot of problems, and it has for many eons. There was no information whatsoever when I was in the programs about a planet with an atmosphere full of gold dust. That was not the information I was exposed to. I didn't hear about anything like that until well after I was in the programs and started being introduced to like Zecharia Sitchin and that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you for
coming, and thank you for me being here. It's been very interesting. My first question, I have to back up with a little bit of information. I have a person that I'm dealing with. He's over in London, and I've been a healer for about 40 years, and before that, as a child, I was working with animals and such, and healing animals. I was called Nature Girl in the area. And my friend in London has a very similar story about the 20-year on Mars as you do, except he was amazing things. He was all his insides were taken out. They tried to take him and make him a cyborg, I guess it is, or a militarized person. And he's 48 years old now, and he's trying to come to grips with the memories that are coming back to him. And I wanted to ask you, are you monitored and tracked by ships all the time? Because he has what look like helicopters, but he's not on the flight path of any helicopter over outside of London. And he says they're about 200 feet up. He can see all the detail on it and everything. And what came to me or was told to me is that they are following him. They're keeping track of him. Do you have that on a daily basis?
I would assume so.
Mm-hmm. But you don't see them? Or?
But I see them often. But they're not always from the same source.
Right.
I mean, I have very curious beings coming in. I'll tell you a couple examples real quick. One time I'm sitting in the house we just moved out of, and this small ship appears in the room. And it looks like it's about the size of a wheel without the tire on a big rig, you know?
Yeah.
And it was very similar, that the sides were concave. And it was sitting there slowly turning, and I could feel that there were many, many beings inside of this little bitty ship. And I asked later on, Kari, and she said they were just in to observe you. There to observe you, to take a closer look. And at the house we were in before that, my wife and I were hearing all these footsteps running around on the ceiling. And then we hear footsteps running around the floor around us, but we don't see anything. And it went on for like 2 days. And I knew I felt a presence. I knew there was someone there, but I didn't know what was going on. Finally, I was sitting on the toilet, you know, sitting there thinking, deep in thought, and I heard footsteps come up close to me. It was just a few feet away, but I couldn't see anything. But this being leaned in and leaned into my awareness so I could see it. And I saw it had a head about the size of a grapefruit, and the top of its head was kind of like in, what was that Will Smith movie with the invasion, you know, 4th of July? It looked kind of like that, but it didn't look evil, or it had a very peaceful energy about it. But it had that kind of a hammerhead, kind of cartilage-looking thing on the top of its head. And it leaned in, and it just wanted me to see, you know, who it was. And then it pulled back, and then they left. They weren't there anymore, and they were there to observe. So yeah, a lot of weird things happen like that. Many people have been with me when I see a craft, and usually what occurs is, like I said, if you hang out with me long enough, you're going to see something. And usually what they've seen is we'll be outside, and they'll say, "Did you see that?" And I know immediately what they're talking about, like a gray sphere, metallic-looking sphere, will pop out from behind the clouds and pop back in, do a peekaboo thing, come in and out. Or it'll pop out and stay there and zig, 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 and then go back. And the people with me, most of the time, had not ever seen a UFO. But that is a consistent thing I've seen. And like I said, the people that will see it and they'll talk about it, they'll be amazed because they never seen anything like that. They don't believe in that kind of thing. The next day, if I try to talk to most of them, they have no idea what I'm talking about. But I'm definitely, you know, under observation, but I'm not aware all the time. I don't see, you know, the same type of craft around, you know, that's the same group observing me.
I've had many encounters with alien beings and ships, both. I have many, many pictures on file crafts that I've been near.
It's really hard for people to understand that, and it's the logistics of it is the hardest part. Every single person on the planet is being picked up. Everybody, at some point, they're being picked up. So it's just a part of what's going on.
Can you talk one thing about how you're being protected? Can you talk about that?
That is kind of involved, and I'm being protected to a certain point. I'm being protected from certain things, but David calls it authorizing. Like if I begin to affect people's free will, then I begin to authorize the dropping of any protection that I have. So most of it depends on my own behavior and my own outlook on things. But I've been told that in every war there are casualties, and this is a war. So there's no guarantee that I'm going to survive. I could have some crazy person that's manipulated, sit in a crowd and hop up with a gun and shoot me. Any kind of things like that can happen. And if it does, then I'm okay with that, just because of the understanding I've been given about what life is and about how really kind of insignificant the ego experience of separation is. But there's no guarantees.
This is what you're doing is so important for us who are still in the body, not out of body, but in the body.
Right. But well, there's been several times to where my sanity was in question for myself. When I was through the programs, I had many dozens of different beings that I either interfaced with or I sat on the other side of a window while they were being interrogated. And I wasn't directly interfacing with them. I was just picking up their emotions and trying to report back to the interrogator. So when a 8-foot-tall blue bird appeared to me, and I'd never heard of anything like it or seen anything like it. There was, these Project Bluebirds out there and all these things. I was extremely concerned about my sanity. I was like, okay, I've either gone nuts or somebody's like beaming shit into my head, So I was very concerned. And I went through, after the experience with that white Draco, it took me days. I had like an etheric hangover. My brain hurt and I felt drained for days, but it also affected my psyche to where, I was not acting myself, and so your psyche is going to be affected by any type of interaction with these beings. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Yeah.
Corey, on the last few slides, you gave us a lot of different websites to go to, and especially for organizing, and I'm really interested in organizing meditation groups or like protest groups or something. Is there one of those sites that's better for that or not? Where
Yeah,
we can
if you go to
register our groups?
secretspaceprogram.com,
That's the best
at the
one?
top, one of the things, I can't remember the name, I don't know if it's organized or it's something similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
If you click on it, it brings you to another page, because we're still just building this out. It brings you to that meetup page to where you can start organizing people in your area. There are a number of tools that we have developed and are developing that are going to help people come together. But like I said, I don't want everybody coming necessarily together under the idea of the blue avians or the idea of we all need to come together. We're not going to be able, just agree to disagree on our belief systems and find a way to come together and focus on, just getting the truth, which is something we all are interested in.
And on one of the last slides, there was a spaceship that you showed. It was like a cylindrical group or craft.
That was the research vessel I was on.
We just saw that last Sunday, and it disappeared into a cloud just like that. Is that so? It's not a non-terrestrial
It's
group?
ours.
It's ours.
About 90% of what we see that we think are ET are ours. Because we now control our own airspace. We didn't have that ability before. So yeah.
Hi, Corey. Was wondering what the Anshar and the Blue Avians think of us. Like, do they kind of look at us as like we might look at a monkey? And
No, let me explain this to you, because this upsets people too. Now, because of these lenses I was talking about, Americans, like if you go to, let's say, like I went to Haiti, when I was like 15, and I noticed that people in our group that had come from America were looking kind of down at people from like a third world country, seeing them, they're not as sophisticated as us, they're not this, they're not that. Well, it's not like it's similar, not necessarily the Anshar, but a lot of these beings, they look at us as completely underdeveloped, and it's a mess. I mean, most of these beings do not want to come down. They don't want to interact with us. Interacting with us it's very unpleasant for them. But yes, many of them, I can't say all of them, because the Anshar, they see us as where they were at one time, and they have a loving, nurturing energy towards us. But a lot of these non-terrestrial beings, they look at us like anything from pets, to like a scientist who picks up the rat. If the rat gets upset or stressed or whatever, well, it's the rat's, compared to my lifetime, the rat's only going to be here, a year. Many of them have that type of perception of us.
Hi, Corey. My name is Allison.
Hello.
I want to thank you for your bravery. I am a naturopath, a Reiki master, and a medium. And I can't remember not being a medium since I was probably 4 years old. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because I'm also part of Vivian's post-disclosure support group, and I am listed on that site, and I listen to you all the time because I think I speak for a lot of people in this room that we are hungry for direction and truth and honesty, and I have made it my life's purpose to try to help others with truth and honesty. And I just was curious if the Anshar or other species or you will continue to guide us with more truth so that we're able to continue to help others in a ripple effect, if that makes any sense.
The closer we get to this event, the more I'm going to be taken out of the process.
Okay, that was my fear.
Yeah, no, it's not. Don't be afraid.
Okay.
Be happy, because the Anshar and other groups, they are starting to connect with people through dream states. They're connecting with people's higher selves, and your higher self determines if you get a communication, what type of communication you'll get, or what type of preparation you need before a communication.
Right.
The positive beings approach you that way. They have to. It's cosmic law.
Okay.
So I am going to fade into the background of chatter. All of these people already are starting to contact me. They're getting communications in dream states, and they're going to develop into face-to-face communications with a lot of these different beings, not just the Anshar. So, and I'm happy about this. I'm just going to be one voice among many as time goes by. And people like the two of you, that are mediums, starseed types that are here, service to others, and are open to that, are going to start receiving it first. But eventually, everyone is going to start to have some sort of a communication that their higher self allows, or so.
Yeah, because I see the fear, and I can feel it from others. That empathetic piece of feeling the fear from others and wanting to kind of quiet that noise, quiet their energy, make them feel at ease and less chaos. So I guess I was just fearful of myself, fearful myself for others to quiet that and get the truth. So, I mean, I feel them. I resonate with what you were saying in the sense that I hear them and I feel them, but sometimes they don't always step outside the veil. I've seen it a few times, but it's not often that they'll do it. So when I feel it and I don't see anything, that's where I'm like, okay, is
Right.
more information coming, or so I can feel the anticipation and that little bit of anxiety. So.
Right. This is changing from a spectator sport to an all-inclusive game.
Yeah.
We're all being pulled into it. If what the Anshar has told me, or if it's remotely true, then I'm just going to be a part of the wider chatter of all these other people that are starting to get this communication. And usually it's going to happen through dreams,
Okay.
and information downloads is one of the things I didn't mention that happened during the eclipse. After the Anshar gave me this information, I thought, okay, the eclipse, if we get a certain amount of people meditating, everyone's going to say, I saw an Anshar, I had a visitation. But they were like, no. It was me looking through my lens again.
Exactly.
That they were going to be mainly what occurred during the eclipse and has occurred since then are people getting downloads. I hear more than anything else. I don't hear about people saying, I'm having more. I have heard this, people having dreams about these beings. But the main thing that's being reported to me are people out of the blue receiving downloads of information. And that's that's their higher self allowing you to receive information for you to be prepared to have more contact.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, Corey. I have a very quick question, but before I start, I also want to mention a little bit thing. And my husband insists I should say that I did the volunteer work of the translate your website from English to the Chinese for the
thank you.
sphere being aligned.
I'm amazed at the interest coming from China. There's a lot of very awakened people there, and we receive very little news or information about what's going on in China and other places, so we don't realize the growth that's occurring there. There's a lot of very awake people there.
My question will be, I have been working with my higher self for several years. I know how to do it, but I don't understand the concept. Is our higher self from different dimensions, from different timelines, or something like that?
Yes. The way it was shown to me, which is very hard to depict, I'm trying to get some animators to help me. I don't know how to explain it. I'll start at the bottom then, I guess. You have self, and then you have the higher self. And the higher self goes up through all the densities until it connects back to the one infinite creator. It branches off from the one infinite creator. And right now, in ego-wise, we're here in self. And as we go up, we go to higher self. And then until self drops off and there's just higher, until you return to the one infinite creator. We're all aspects. It's almost like eddies twisting down, and you're coming down to this density of and this awareness of self. Does that make sense? Sort of, yeah. It's really hard to, but yes, we are multi-dimensional beings. That we all have the same connection. There's no difference between us. We all have the same connection. That in origin, which is the one infinite creator. And we're all a branch of that one infinite creator with different levels of awareness. And the level of awareness we have right now is down in the ego and self. And as consciousness expands and we go up these higher rungs of consciousness and higher self, we'll get to the point where self won't even be a part of the equation in our experience. It'll just be higher, the higher.
So where do you think you go when you reincarnate? So you die, you go where before you come back to get to a different dimension?
Yeah, I don't know. And if I were to tell you, I would just be telling you my belief system. Yeah, maybe. I may not have the ability to conceive what that realm is like. Our level of consciousness, we can't perceive certain things. Thank you.